I love this, which is AI just enables you to do stupid, wrong things much faster. And it is really true. And I think that's why we still need experts. You can get a little bit of a head start with different AI tools, but somebody needs to know like what the strategy should be. Otherwise, it's just higher
The
volume.
expertise hasn't been lost. You're absolutely correct. And what I find super interesting more recently, like in the last 6 to 9 months, is there was a lot of fears early on about less experienced folks, right? So folks were seeing that the more experienced people were producing better. So I push back a lot these days, especially in places like LinkedIn, where I'll call it hate for vibe coding right now from the more technical side of the community is palpable. There's just like constant examples and articles and opinions about how terrible, vibe coded apps are and how nobody understands what the issues they're going to run into eventually.
Joe, welcome to Product Growth Story. So super happy to have you on the show. So you have been, you've been through the startup roller coaster several times now, and now you have your own company, Basic. I'd love to hear a little bit about what are you working on right now? What is Basic?
Yeah. Hey, Jean Michael, thanks for having me here. Basics has kind of two parts to the business. We have a consulting arm where I spend about half my time doing fractional CTO work, working mostly with early stage companies that are either bringing their first product to market or starting to scale their engineering team. And the second half is a more traditional kind of software business. So we have two different products that we're working on at the moment. Both are really early stage. We're starting to get some of our first customers now, but we are very much going through the throes of getting a business off the ground. This is my third startup, as you mentioned. So it's an interesting time to be starting a new business.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we probably have to talk about the main elephant in the room for startups right now, which is AI. And I'm curious how you're like in general, how are you handling just doing development now? I mean, there's always claims on both sides. People are saying, fire in your engineering team, just get Kimmy K3 subscription and everything will work. And then we also see studies saying, a lot of the vibe coded stuff, all it does is push bugs down further. And now it's not even faster because it's just a harder QA nightmare on the enterprise side. So how do you see it?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. So, as a software engineer, I'm a little biased, but I don't see any short-term world where software engineering is going away. Like, I just think that software systems and bringing any meaningful application to market still requires too much knowledge and information. And AI has supercharged much of that, enabling the most experienced software engineers to produce outputs they've never seen before. And I think that's an asset, not a situation where I'm seeing lots of folks saying, okay, this means we don't need more software engineering. But I think the reality is the way we're building products has changed almost completely, certainly in the last year and a half. And as you said, I mean, still changing constantly. If you kind of dipped your head out of AI, 4 or 5 months ago, like the reality today from a model capability standpoint, from third-party tools that are out there, from the evolution of the startups that had early traction, it has almost all radically changed in both good and bad ways. And so my perspective very much right now is there are a few concrete things that have come out of this. Cycle times are absolutely plummeting downwards. The time it should take and the time it does take to bring new features to market, to solve bugs, to process customer requests, all of these things are getting much, much easier because you can now automate things that used to take significant time in the pipeline. Things that haven't changed as much, in my opinion, that I think people want to change and sometimes maybe put it out there that they think it is changing, but I haven't seen the same traction. It's just understanding how to build the right things, right? Understanding your roadmap,
Yes.
your customers, like all of this type of thing is still very much there.
I heard this recently. I love this, which is AI just enables you to do stupid, wrong things much faster. And it is really true. And I think that's why we still need experts. You can get a little bit of a head start with different AI tools, but somebody needs to know like what the strategy should be. Otherwise, it's just higher
The
volume.
expertise hasn't been lost. You're absolutely correct. And what I find super interesting more recently, like in the last 6 to 9 months, is there was a lot of fears early on about less experienced folks, right? So folks were seeing that the more experienced people were producing better. Does this push us towards a world where you only have 2 or 3 more senior team members that are outputting the same output as a team of 10? I'm actually starting to see that trickle down now to the junior and mid-level engineers, right? Where they're able to pick up AI, learn systems that previously would take months with a lot of like shadowing from more experienced folks. They can pick it up themselves. They can have the AI walk them through complex processes and code base, and their output's starting to increase at the same rate. And so I see it very much as a rebalancing. Now, in total, I think we're moving towards and already are at a place where smaller teams are doing a lot more. And that's what people are focused on. And that has a bunch of positive and negative impacts. But I'm happy to see that it seems like all levels are now starting to benefit. It's not just the most experienced folks.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so when you look at basic, you said there's a couple of different products. Like, what is the market problem that you're trying to solve with basic?
Yeah. So, two areas we're kind of probing at. The first in our core product is around making sense of all the conversations that everybody's having on a daily basis and specifically connecting that to your inbox environment. So, our core product's called Topic. It's an inbox solution that allows particularly sales and customer success teams to manage their inbox next to their conversations in a way that keeps them in flow of how they like to work with their customers. So if you're a salesperson right now, you might be using multiple tools to record conversations, to track progress. You've got Salesforce that you're working to manage your deals. And then you have your inbox that's separate, that's critical to any daily operations. And customer success teams have a similar view. What Topic does is it tries to bring all those things together. So directly in your inbox, you can see conversation transcripts, actions, summaries, results and follow-ups from previous meetings, and prep you need to do for future activities. And so the idea is to try and give you one more unified space to just manage the massive amounts of information that's coming at you. So that's one product. The second product we're working on is called Musel. It's all around prompt observability, but all targeting both technical and non-technical folks. So what we're seeing, and this
Prompt
started as
observability.
yeah, great question. So what everybody is dealing with now, both technical and non-technical folks, is we're building this arsenal of prompts that you use on a daily basis, right? And for non-technical folks, it's things they built themselves to help Claude complete their daily activity. For technical folks, it's prompts that are going into applications, prompts they're using and skills they're building to manage software development, code reviews, all these types of things. And having that in one central place is becoming really difficult, right? People try MD files, they try and store them in notepads. A lot of engineers keep them in code. We want to bring much more visibility into your prompts so that you can manage them more effectively, understand costs, be able to test out new models, and then really just track usage of those prompts, particularly when you're using high volume execution so that you can know, hey, this one prompt over here is costing you, $300 a month, while this one over here is only costing you 50 cents a month. Like, these are the things that you should be focusing on. And again, we really think this is growing for everyone, both technical and non-technical folks. So we're trying to build a platform to help you support that.
Love it. I see. So this is something for, say, enterprise teams where they're actually going to have a very significant cost difference depending on, all the different prompts which may be existing in their space.
Yeah. What I like to say, prompts are infrastructure, right? Like, they're core to how everyone is doing their work, and they are literally being built into the application side. And then they are logically being built into non-technical folks who are running their day off of different prompts. And so you should treat it as such. When a prompt, when a provider goes down, which we've all experienced, this is a work stoppage level event these days. It's a P0 in the engineering terms. And so you need the same level of observability, of understanding where you're spending your money, what's your backup plan, all these types of things. And we think we can do that through a platform.
Got it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So how are you finding these initial early stage customers?
It's hard right now, to be perfectly blunt. This is, as I mentioned, it's my third startup. We've run a bunch of different go-to-market functions, and I'll caveat this: I'm a software engineer. Thankfully, my business partner is the sales guy and knows much more about it than I do. But the earliest customers, and we're still very much at the earliest stage, is still often just our network and like reaching out to companies we know that we have relationships with, just trying to get 3, 4, 5 customer users here, 3, 4, 5 users there, and getting them in the platform to give feedback. But as we're starting to get past that first tranche, we're relooking at a lot of the go-to-market functions because everything right now is really noisy. The
Hmm.
traditional methods from cold calling to LinkedIn outreach to cold emailing, all of these things now they were already saturated. They've always been a struggle to get good results out of these methods. But now with AI, I mean, I'm sure you have this. If you just open up your LinkedIn inbox, I mean, it feels like every
It's
day you're
all
getting,
AI in there.
it's
It's
all AI and
and the
it's like
comments are
poorly
AI. They're all these like
customized.
one paragraph, honestly, and then they have this like very terse, dense thing that I don't know why that's people are doing that for engagement or whatever. But yeah, there's so much
Yeah,
AI on there.
it's the reality, and that's kind of why we have the consulting arm in the business right now. Is like, we're very much trying to pay attention to the cutting edge and figure out where we think things are going. But in that vein, like having a services arm to your business right now, I think is a really smart move because the technology side is changing so much that kind of having a bit of a diversification of how you're bringing revenue through the front door, it seems to make sense to us at the moment. We're having some success with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's always good at an early stage startup to have a separate services because it's really a catch all. Like if you meet somebody and you know you can help them, there's a way to do that doesn't force them through the product, gives you more kind of at bats. So definitely
That's
makes
exactly right.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the things I've been seeing on Twitter recently is this idea of a dark house, right? Have you heard of the dark house for software where there's nobody producing any software? It's all 100% AI. And some people have gone, to try to set this up to work as well as they can. And
Yeah.
how far can we get? I mean, that's an awesome dream that you can just, describe the product and then the easy bake oven goes ding and then suddenly you've got the thing ready to go. But
Yeah.
how far do you think we can realistically get if you're not selling the hype?
Man, this is such an awesome question. So I push back a lot these days, especially in places like LinkedIn, where I'll call it hate for vibe coding right now from the more technical side of the community it's palpable. There's just like constant examples and articles and opinions about how terrible, vibe coded apps are and how nobody understands what the issues they're going to run into eventually. And while there's certainly plenty of truth to that, but the reality is that I think the folks who are focusing on that are missing your point, which is where are we going, right? In
Yeah.
24 months, we've gone from like auto completion based AI to, Mythos that can one shot massive parts of your application with plenty of issues that need to be solved. But oftentimes those issues are solvable very quickly. And
Hmm.
so when I look at this and I look at the fact that we've yet to see any good indications that we're hitting a major plateau from a model capability perspective yet, I think we are absolutely heading towards a world where you can describe an application and get a meaningful percentage of the way there, if not all of the way. And I also think that at some point we'll start making the shift to focus less on the current ways we build technology and more on ways that are better for AI. So like a simple example of this is coding languages are built so that humans can read it. I
Yeah.
believe we're going to be moving towards coding languages that are built for AI to minimize token use and effectively do what they want. And that will essentially cut humans out of the loop at some
This is
point.
like
And so
Hoffman encoding the words or something. Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's hard to see that's not where we're going. Now, are we going to get there next year? Absolutely not. I mean, I think this
Hmm.
is a 5 to 10 year horizon where we get to a point. I also think on the infrastructure side in particular, there's a whole massive set of problems that AI is just starting to scratch the surface with. It can build web apps, quite well in certain areas. That's entirely different from building a scalable app that, 100,000 users can use at the same time. So we've got a lot of hills to climb, but would I say we're not getting there? No, absolutely not. That's where we're heading. And I think it's likely we will get there.
Yeah. It's fun to speculate about. And because it's so accessible and everyone has it, it's the biggest like trend of the lifetime here. It seems that every business is now somehow impacted by this or affected, even like I run a service business and the whole business model is different now because of how much
Mm.
one person can manage with AI tools versus like even last year. I don't think the same business would be possible. It's quite kind of amazing.
By the way, that
Yeah.
one of the key things that I've seen change for folks is finding the time to stay up to date with
Hmm.
where the tech is going has become its own challenge. You
Hmm.
know, when I was VP of engineering at my last startup, right? Like I'm in meetings, 35 to 40 hours a week. I'm running a team of dozens of engineers. We're dealing with, raising funds and meeting revenue targets and all these types of things. If I had 2 hours to just go off and try and understand where like industry trends were going, that would be incredible. And
Yeah.
that's becoming not only just part of the job, but like an absolute requirement if you're doing something hard, if you're trying to push the edges of something. And finding that time is really hard for folks, especially at those stages.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree. So, what are you seeing in the consulting services arm of the business? How are you seeing this affecting like Series D, Series C companies for their engineering teams? Does it change like how you would organize them or what, how they would work now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when you're at that stage, it's a very tough stage, particularly in the last 12 months to be at with all of the AI changes. And I don't mean that from the business perspective. Series C, Series D is always tough for a million different reasons. But
Hmm.
at that stage, you've been around for at least a couple of years, right? Unless you're one of these absolutely hyperscale companies. And that means, you probably have a tech stack that was built pre-AI, or at least, just at the super early stages of AI. And so you're going to have tech debt. You're going to have a relatively complex platform that was built at a time where the engineering world was entirely different. And that is not just from a tech perspective, that could also be from a team perspective too, right? If you have engineers that have been around, they've grown up with that tech stack and they're used to it and these types of things. So I'm often called in when, founders and the CTO is understanding, hey, we're seeing a lot of opportunity, but we're having a lot of trouble mapping it to how our team operates today from a process perspective. And I think, it's just a classic example where bringing somebody in from the outside with fresh eyes can often see very obvious pitfalls. And they're almost always around process and approach of how they're deploying things for the team. I mentioned earlier cycle times, right? This is where I start. It's amazing. I see many teams that are deploying AI. They have a bunch of smart engineers. They're looking at the right spaces, but they can't get over their existing processes, right? They can't figure
Yeah.
out how to bring a feature from, initial discussion to deployment without it still going through the same 15 stage gates that it always did. And so they're applying AI within the stage gates, but they're having a real hard time taking a step back and say, you know what, we can reduce this by 50% because of what it's giving us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always the hardest is changing the actual humans. It's the
Yeah,
slow
the
part of
change
the whole.
management process. This is a part
Yeah.
of AI that's not different, by the way. It's like,
Yeah, that is the one.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I love it. So, just as we wrap up, what would you say, is your number one piece of advice for other tech founders out there dealing with AI in 2026?
That's a great question. I think what I would say is what I alluded to earlier. We are very much still figuring out where things are going with AI. And, as a founder myself, and the advice I give to folks, especially folks who are, have been seeing a lot of success and are looking around and seeing a lot of changes to a velocity that feels different, I think I would embrace that very seriously. And what I mean by that tactically is that you have to give your team room to adjust as all these things are changing, right? Costs are increasing. At the same time, models are getting better. At the same time, the opportunity for open source models and frontier models and different third party technologies, all of these things are exploding. And so the tendency I see folks, and the mistake I think I see folks, is cramming all the extra capacity they get with just new features.
Yeah.
And it's so hard not to do that. And what's hard right now is to take a beat back and give your team the time to look internally to figure out what they're not thinking about in the next like 3 to 6 months. It's so hard to do that right now with how fast and the pressure founders have. But like now more than ever, it's absolutely critical because I think that's how you get left behind is that you pick a direction now. You don't give yourself or your team time to kind of review it. And then in 3 to 6 months, something's going to change in a way that you are just completely blindsided by right now.
Yeah. That's great advice. Well, Joe, thank you so much.
John, Michael, it's a pleasure. Thanks for the time.